The idea sounds almost unthinkable. For more than 70 years, aircraft carriers have been the center of American naval power, the clearest symbol of U.S. military reach and global influence. They have defined how the United States fights at sea, how it deters rivals, and how it reassures allies. Yet quietly, and with very little public attention, the U.S. Navy has been preparing for a future in which aircraft carriers may no longer be able to do what they once did. This does not mean carriers are disappearing. It means the Navy is planning for a scenario where they cannot be used the way everyone expects. This shift is not driven by theory or speculation. It is driven by changes in how war at sea actually works. For decades, aircraft carriers were built around one central advantage: freedom of maneuver. They could sail close to hostile shores, launch aircraft deep inland, and remain relatively safe while doing so. During the Cold War, carriers operated under the shadow of nuclear deterrence. After it ended, they operated in environments where the United States faced little serious naval opposition. In those conditions, the carrier was not just powerful, it was dominant. That dominance is no longer guaranteed. Modern warfare has transformed the ocean from a vast, concealing space into a monitored and contested environment. Satellites track surface ships continuously. Long-range radars extend detection far beyond the horizon. Drones, unmanned sensors, and networked surveillance systems compress time and space. A carrier strike group, once difficult to locate, can now be detected, tracked, and targeted long before it reaches a conflict zone. The weapons that follow this detection are equally transformative. Long-range anti-ship missiles can travel hundreds or even thousands of miles. Some are designed to maneuver unpredictably, complicating interception. Others rely on complex kill chains that integrate space, air, sea, and cyber domains. Even if these systems are not perfect, they force carriers to operate much farther away from danger than they once did. Distance changes everything. An aircraft carrier that must stay hundreds of miles from hostile shores has less influence than one operating closer in. Its aircraft need greater range, more refueling, and more support. Sortie rates drop, response times increase. The carrier still matters, but it is no longer the unquestioned centerpiece of every operation. The U.S. Navy understands this reality, and it is not waiting for a crisis to adapt. Instead of assuming carriers will always be available and survivable, planners are increasingly asking a difficult question: what if they are not? This question has reshaped how the Navy thinks about war. Rather than building its strategy around a small number of extremely valuable platforms, the Navy is exploring ways to fight using distributed forces. The idea is simple, but radical in practice. Instead of concentrating power, spread it. Instead of relying on a few visible assets, rely on many smaller, harder-to-target ones. Instead of assuming constant air cover from carriers, assume that air support may be limited, delayed, or unavailable. This is the foundation of the Navy's plan to fight without aircraft carriers at the center of every operation. One part of this plan focuses on surface forces. Smaller warships armed with long-range missiles can operate independently or in loose networks. Individually, they are less powerful than a carrier strike group. Collectively, they can create complex threat environments that are difficult to suppress. Their smaller size and lower signature make them harder to track, while their dispersion reduces the impact of losing any single ship. Another part of the plan relies heavily on submarines. Submarines do not need air superiority to survive. They operate in one of the few remaining domains where detection is still uncertain and imperfect. Attack submarines can threaten surface ships, disrupt sea lines of communication, and strike targets ashore without revealing their position. In a carrier-constrained environment, submarines become not just supporting assets, but primary ones. Land-based air power also plays a crucial role. Instead of relying solely on carrier aviation, the Navy and its partners are integrating more closely with land-based aircraft operated by the Air Force and allied nations. These aircraft can provide strike capability, surveillance, and air defense from bases that are harder to target or politically more flexible than carriers at sea. This approach requires coordination and planning, but it reduces dependence on any single platform. Unmanned systems are another critical element. Drones, both in the air and at sea, extend the Navy's reach without risking pilots or crews. Unmanned surface vessels can act as sensors, decoys, or missile platforms. Unmanned underwater vehicles can scout ahead, monitor choke points, or support submarine operations. These systems are not replacements for carriers, but they help fill the gaps when carriers cannot be used freely. What ties all of these elements together is a shift in mindset. The Navy is moving away from the idea that war must be fought through decisive carrier-led battles. Instead, it is preparing for conflicts defined by denial, endurance, and uncertainty. The goal is not necessarily to achieve immediate dominance, but to prevent an adversary from achieving their objectives. This approach aligns with how modern wars are more likely to unfold. Future conflicts may begin with ambiguity rather than clear declarations. They may involve cyber attacks, information warfare, and economic pressure alongside military actions. In such an environment, deploying a carrier close to danger can be as much a liability as an asset. Its presence signals escalation. Its loss would carry enormous political consequences. By planning to fight without carriers at the center, the Navy gains flexibility. Leaders are not forced into an all-or-nothing decision about deploying their most valuable assets. They can apply pressure gradually, using forces that are harder to target and easier to replace. This reduces the risk of sudden escalation and preserves options over time. It is important to understand what this plan does not mean. The U.S. Navy is not abandoning aircraft carriers. They remain powerful tools, especially in lower-risk environments or later stages of conflict. They provide unmatched command and control capabilities, sustained air operations, and global presence. But they are no longer assumed to be the first or only answer to every problem. Instead, carriers are being repositioned within a broader system. They may operate farther from danger, supporting operations rather than leading them. They may arrive later in a conflict once risks have been reduced, or they may serve primarily as deterrent symbols rather than active combat platforms. This adjustment reflects realism, not decline. The Navy is acknowledging that the era of uncontested access is over. It is accepting that some environments will be too dangerous for traditional carrier operations, at least in the early stages of a conflict. Rather than denying this reality, it is building a force designed to function under those conditions. This shift also has implications beyond tactics and technology. It changes how success is measured. Instead of focusing on decisive victories, the emphasis moves toward preventing losses, controlling escalation, and sustaining operations over time. A conflict that does not escalate into full-scale war may be considered a success, even if no dramatic battles occur. In this sense, the plan to fight without aircraft carriers is also a plan to avoid fighting in the traditional sense. It is about shaping outcomes without triggering catastrophic escalation. It is about maintaining leverage while reducing vulnerability. It is about ensuring that the Navy can still function, still deter, and still protect interests even when its most iconic platforms are constrained. The most striking part of this transformation is how quietly it is happening. There are no speeches declaring the end of the carrier era, no dramatic announcements about a new way of war. Instead, the change appears in training exercises, force design concepts, and procurement decisions. It is visible only if you know where to look. That quiet approach is intentional. Publicly questioning the role of aircraft carriers could undermine deterrence or signal weakness. Privately planning for their limitations, however, strengthens resilience. It ensures that the Navy is not trapped by its own assumptions. The U.S. Navy's plan to fight without aircraft carriers is not about rejecting the past. It is about preparing for a future where the old rules no longer apply. In that future, power will be measured less by what can be seen and more by what can survive. The Navy that adapts to that reality will not be the one that fights the most wars, but the one that prevents the most from ever starting.